Kenneth F. McKenzie, Jr. for testifying before.
While the DoD helps conduct the emergency evacuation, it's a State Department that is responsible under law for developing the plan and leading the evacuation. Is that your understanding?
Yes. The State Department is the lead federal agency for planning and execution, oversight of the execution of the non-combatant operation. And the Department of Defense is in support of, and other departments are in support of the State Department. The State Department's the lead federal agency for NEOs. That's correct.
General McKenzie?
I agree with that.
General Mark A. Milley, and former commander of the United States Central Command.
And Embassy Kabul had a plan, had what we would call an F-77 list, which is the list of U.S. Citizens and their families that are in the country. And we struggled to gain access to that plan and work with them over the months of July until we finally got a decision to execute the NEO, which, as I've already mentioned, occurred on the 14th of August. Now, we worked with the embassy before then, but we didn't have authority to move out and do the things that you have to do to make a NEO happen until the 14th of July, or correction, the 14th of August. And as I noted, we were in extremis at that point.
And former commander of the United States Central Command.
In fact, I was concerned by the middle of July. I was concerned about the different pace of Department of Defense planning as compared to Department of State planning.
Former chairman of the Chief of Staffs. General.
Having a plan is one thing, preparing the plan, vetting the plan, coordinating the plan with the people that are going to actually carry you out, the Department of Defense, that's another set of tasks completely.
And that was too little, too late.
It is my judgment that it was far too little, far too late.
Was that your assessment, General Milley?
It was, and I would broaden it a little bit by saying it was a pretty consistent assessment by me and other members of the uniformed military, up to and including the Secretary, that the withdrawal of the military forces and the contractors and the NATO forces that went with it would ultimately lead, as I said in my opening statement, to a general collapse of the ANSF and the government. And as I mentioned, the tension was, when would those conditions be made? It was also our assessment at the time that keeping an embassy open in a war zone, which Afghanistan was, and to do that without the presence of the U.S. military and the contractors and NATO, et cetera, that embassy would be untenable.
And that was your advice to the State Department and the White House?
Well, as you know, because of the requirements of executive privilege, et cetera, I can tell you what my assessments were at the time, and those were my thoughts at the time.
Do you believe that their failure to plan timely created the chaos at HKIA Airport?
I think the call to execute the NEO came too late, and as General McKenzie mentioned, it was officially logged in on the 14th. At that point in time, the Afghan government senior leadership was preparing to depart, and they departed the next day on the 15th. Thousands of Afghan civilians were gathering at the airport. The Afghan security forces were collapsing in the various provincial capitals, and although there were some still in and around Kabul. So the general situation at that point was 750 U.S. soldiers in and around the embassy. The Turkish troops were required, along with some ANSF, to protect HKIA. They melted away. So you had a situation with the U.S. Embassy and 750 troops when that NEO was called. And now we had leaned forward. So I think it's the 9th, 10th, or 11th time frame. We had already put forces on alert, et cetera. But in essence, we alerted, Marshal deployed 82nd Airborne Division, Division Ready Brigade, and the MU out of Saudi that was underneath General McKenzie's control. They rapidly deployed along with special forces to take control of that airport.
Chairman of the Chief of Staffs.